Well, hello and welcome. Now, between the 23rd of February and the 2nd of March next year, 2024, Journeys with Purpose is going to host a small group of 8 guests in Belize to engage with the nation's pioneering NGOs. They're going to discover the nation's vast ecological wealth and character of environmental stewardship. The journey is going to be personally hosted by Ronnie Martinez, which is one of Belize's top nature guides, and Paul Lister, who is founder of the European Nature Trust. Ahead of the journey, I'm delighted to say that we are joined by Paul, along with Elma May, director of Belize Maya Forest Trust, which is the non-governmental organization entrusted with the stewardship and management of Belize's second largest private protected area. We're going to learn more about Belize's conservation efforts and where guests can hope to gain from their visit next year. Elma, Paul, lovely to see you. Thank you both for joining.
Thank you, Ross.
Great to see you. Thanks,
Thank
Ross.
you for hosting.
Now, Paul, let's start with you, because you first went to Belize more than a decade ago, and you've been many times since, and you have got involved in supporting conservation efforts. You've started making, or you've made a TV series about Belize called Belize Unknown. But I want to take you back to that first time that you first visited. Whatever your preconceptions were, what was it about Belize that really stuck out for you and have made you want to get so involved with the country since?
Okay, Ross, good starting question. Well, I was invited over by a gentleman called Chris Minty, who had a long association with Belize. And I was rather bizarrely, it looks bizarre now because I look back in time, I was living in Miami in the winter months of the year. I used to explore from there, certain countries in Latin America. And he said, look, why don't we get a group together and head over to Belize? I want to show you around. And I had no real preconceptions about the country. I just knew that it was in Central America, obviously, not far away from Miami, a short flight. And so we were in the flow. And just from the moment we landed right through to the very end of the trip, it was just a very exceptional country. And I think the one moment that really triggered me into kind of falling in love with the country or its landscapes and then ultimately its people was the Tikibul forest, because I know that Chris took us down to meet Rafael in Las Cuevas, which is actually part of the trip's itinerary. And we stayed in the research station there. And I remember going up there, I think at the bird tower. There's a beautiful bird tower on top of this hill there, and it overlooks this incredible forest towards Guatemala and all the way back towards the Caribbean Sea. And when you just see the immensity and the enormity of that forest, and you hear the sounds, and you look at all the lush vegetation, and you think to yourself, my God, these are the lungs of the earth. And I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with the natural beauty and the incredible nature of the country. And that was really the most powerful thing that triggered me. We had many other interesting experiences on that short trip, but that was the one you asked me, which is a key moment. Well, that would have been it. That would have bring a lot of people to tears, actually, when you stand in a place like that. You know, it really creates an emotion and really makes you connect and think, wow, you know, there's something far greater than humankind to this natural world, which is very special. And more so in Belize, because 80% of the country is relatively protected at the moment. Well, it's certainly not developed. And that's a big percentage, you know, to have of a country that's obviously striving for economic growth at the same time.
Elma, how conscious are people in Belize, I guess, of the natural assets that Paul's talked about and the breadth of them as well? Because it's forest, it's pine forest, it's ocean, it's Great Barrier Reef.
Oh, there we go. Right, there's our mic.
There's always going to be someone with a muted button.
Yes, that's correct. No, Ross, I think that, you know, Belizeans are very conscious because we are a small population. It's a very unique country in terms of size and population. We're just over 400,000 people at this time. And, you know, 20 years ago, we were, you know, even less. And so people, I think, are still very connected to nature. 50% of our population is rural, which means that they're highly dependent on forest ecosystems, whether it's for provisioning of food, of materials for building. I myself grew up in a rural area, and that surrounding forest being part of growing up was just, that was normal. So definitely, I think that connection is not that far removed. It's also because it's a small country. Like even people in the urban population, they have access to quite a bit in terms of the sea and enjoying that nature. Perhaps people are not as well traveled throughout all the ecosystems of the country. It is something that we are trying to do better at in terms of exposure of young people to the breadth of the diversity of the systems. But certainly I recall, and this is a while ago, a few decades ago, going on school trips, like every child in Belize goes to the Belize Zoo. If there's no other place that they go to the Belize Zoo. And you might think like a zoo is kind of like, most people, I would say, especially abroad, would think of a zoo as a place with a lot of cages and concrete walls and animals locked up. But our zoo in Belize is not like that at all. I mean, it's very wild. Sometimes you can't even see the animals because it's so wild. And it really is a zoo with only native animals that have been rescued and are being used for outreach purposes here. That's a really neat institution we have. And so that's a place where we can go see the jaguar, a tapir, a scarlet macaw, all these iconic animals that we have. So I do feel that people in Belize are aware and connected, and I think what we have to do is just deepen that connection in terms of the livelihoods being integrated with that connection that we already have. And I think that's the challenge and the opportunity ahead in terms of the conservation work that many of us do here in this country.
Yeah, and it's probably just worth sort of recapping the breadth of this a little bit. You've talked about the zoo and the scarlet macaws, but I suppose just worth just giving a sort of a list of the sort of the range of natural sites and animals.
Belize has a system of over 100 protected areas, and this is really incredible. I don't know such an extensive system. And we also do have these incredible forest blocks. And in the marine space, I mean, we are talking about a World Heritage Site, the Belize Barrier Reef, which is part of the larger Mesoamerican reef. Belize has the longest barrier reef on this side of the world. So the diversity, it is really incredible. And as I say, that system of so many protected areas, it's very, very, very extensive.
So I guess Paul, on this trip, we're going to experience a bit of everything, because you've sort of planned an itinerary here that gives them exposure to different conservation organizations and also the different geographies of Belize.
Yes, in a short amount of time, I think it's 8 nights. We'll be exploring the Maya forest around Galanjug on the western side of the country next to Guatemala. Then we head onto the mountain pine ridge, which sounds a bit odd. A lot of people think of pine trees and forests and stuff like European Alps and things, but this is high forest in Belize. It's up about 1,800 feet, and we're staying there at a Blanken Lodge, which was the former home of Francis Coppola, the film producer, now more known for his winemaking effect as well. And then we head south into Chiquibul, and we met Rafael at Las Cuevas, and then we head out towards the coast to Terrestrial. Along the way, of course, we've got a plethora of activities and things to do, and people are going to be meeting. I think it's 4 NGOs, including the organization that Elma heads up, and also I think Virginia Tech with the big cats, and then Friends of Conservation and Development with Rafael, and out to Tassa on the Turnip Atoll. So yes, we're going to bring a little bit of variety. I think also the flight in from Belize City over to Galanjug, it's only like 25 minutes, but it gives you a really good snapshot. I mean, I know some people are always concerned about air travel and things like this, but I think when you actually get up in a light aircraft above a place, you get a real sense of scale and enormity, and it's very difficult to get that on the ground. So just from a very short 25-minute flight in a Cessna Caravan, it's a 12-seater, they're used by 2 internal airlines in Belize. We're going to fly over wetlands and the jungle before we land at Galanjug, the estate there that Michael Bowen owns. And I think that gives people a really good perspective. It's like immediately you go, wow. I remember taking that flight once, and literally you look out the cockpit windows and you just see this vast forest going on and on and on. And then, of course, at the beginning, there's a little bit of inland wetland of crooked tree and this sort of lovely inland wetland landscape.
Yeah, I'm my first trip there. I do remember even coming in on the plane into Belize City, just as you fly down the coast. It is, I always take a window seat for this reason, but just to see the extraordinary coastline and then see the land behind. I mean, I was glued. It is really quite extraordinary.
Well, we'll get the chance to see the ocean.
Yeah.
Because I think during the journey we end up, I think, taking a flight, if I'm correct, from Blanc Canoes airstrip across into Terrestrial, and that will be like sort of 40 minutes, 45 minutes, and that really will show you some beautiful landscape as well. So we've got actually 2 short internal flights, and
of course on this itinerary you're going to see lots of different flora and fauna, but also lots of different wildlife encounters. One hopes howler monkeys, scarlet macaws. I guess seeing a jaguar. I don't know how many people actually see jaguar, but they're definitely there, aren't they, Elma?
They are definitely there, and I will tell you that your opportunity will be when you are with us at the Belize Maya Forest. And in the Galanjug area that Paul has mentioned is a private area within that forest. They are our neighbors and partners. That entire block that is basically the Rio Bravo, which is a private protected area that was started in the late 80s, early 90s. We now are neighbors to the Rio Bravo, the Belize Maya Forest, and then we have that small private forest, the Galanjug. Together, we consolidate 500,000 acres of protected forest in the Northwest. And it is one of the areas where I can safely say that if you were to spend a week there, a jaguar is likely to be seen. I don't think there's many places even in the rest of Belize where you can say that. Of course, the possibility is there because we know the jaguars are there, but they are elusive. But in our space, they are definitely, I would say, a lot more visible than anywhere else. And it's just the level of protection. Some other areas have quite a bit of challenges with, for example, transboundary incursions. But in our area, they are really, really, really well protected, and we are blessed to not have as many challenges with, for example, transboundary incursions. So you can see a jaguar for sure. It's a possibility.
I saw a jaguar in Chanchi. My first and only jaguar so far in Belize was at Chanchi. A young juvenile, and I was with Mary Haberfeld from the old safari project in Brazil. It happens.
Yes, anywhere in Belize it's possible, but I would say that in the Belize Maya Forest is probable.
Well, which is amazing because they are about one of the hardest animals to see at all. So that's extraordinary. So when people come and visit as well, Elma, what's the opportunity to get some really sort of hands-on understanding of the work that you do?
No, definitely we will share with folks what we have been doing. The Belize Maya Forest is relatively new, the Belize Maya Forest Trust. The property was purchased for conservation in perpetuity for the people and government of Belize at the end of the 2020. So that was actually the height of the pandemic. And so it happened a bit quietly, but it did go through. And it allowed us to save this incredible space. And so over the last couple of years, we've been ramping up on the management And one of the things that we're betting on as an organization is actually the community work, the community programs and community outreach, because the area is protecting incredible watershed for some of these communities, biodiversity that we all care about. It actually serves as a source to these communities that are a sink to receive some of these animals in the bits of forest that they still have remaining, although there's not a lot in the area. And I think we are betting on transforming the landscape around, to be more compatible with the work that we are doing. There's quite a bit of large scale industrialized monocrop. So agriculture that really takes away everything else in terms of the forest or the forest ecosystem. And so we're really trying to make that space softer. We're trying to work with private landowners and communities to do that. And so when the folks visit, we will see the incredible wildlife because there's so much of it. The spider monkeys are amazing. Just a week ago, right in a hike around Chanchich, Laguna Seca in the Belize Maya Forest, we had this incredible display of acrobatics. It was like they were performing for us. They're so comfortable. They're not scared of people because they are protected in that space. So people will get to see that incredible wildlife. Ocellated turkeys. I don't know any place that you can see so many of these amazingly colorful animals that display their displays are quite something to observe. Great curassows. I mean, this place is really teeming with biodiversity. So guests will be exposed to that, those coming on the journey. But I think we'll also talk a lot about the advances we have made with the community programs.
And that I suppose that's really important. And in a wider perspective, how important do you think Belizeans think that sort of high-end ecotourism is in supporting your work and demonstrating, but whilst also generating a sort of an economic interest?
I think it's what Belizeans would like to see more of. In fact, the country, the last tourism master plan that was developed for the country looked at trying to focus on that overnight, tourism and ecotourism. I still think we have many opportunities left in that space, but it is the type of tourism that gives back to the country, and it is the tourism we want to encourage. Overnight visitors, they get exposed to pretty places, but they also get exposed to people, to having a deeper understanding of Belize's conservation goals, of Belize's sustainable development needs. So we definitely want more of those overnight tourists. I think COVID did teach us a lesson in terms of, because we are heavily reliant on tourism overall. And I think COVID did show us that, we need to build some resilience in that system by connecting, for example, tourism with food systems and water security systems. So those things have to, work more hand in hand. But that is definitely, Ross, the kind of tourism that we want. We want people to connect with us. We don't want sort of fly by night. You come and you enjoy in your little bubble. We want people that are interested in what we have to offer as a country: culture, heritage, people, and biodiversity as well.
Mm-hmm. It's fair to say, isn't it, Paul? I mean, every night here is a fully immersive experience wherever you are on the agenda.
Yes, absolutely. I don't think there's going to be too much time for lying by the pool, although towards the end of the trip, I think out at Turner Battle, there'll be that opportunity. But no, I really think the key about Belize, and the reason why people should think about joining this journey, is just the people themselves. The Belizeans are a great natural host. They really are a friendly, outgoing populace, and I think more so than anywhere I've been in Latin America. I know that everybody talks about going to Costa Rica, but I think folks should think about going somewhere else, which is a lot less populated, only 15 people per square kilometer, natural hosts, wonderful local food, incredible seafood, and I just think it's a very, very special place. And we made the 4-part documentary film series, and it was really made with 3 purposes in mind. One was to illustrate and demonstrate to the Belizean people and reinforce just how special their country is. So they could then watch it on national TV and just feel proud about what's going on there and what's been protected so far. Secondly, was really to encourage the kind of tourism that Elma was referring to, this sort of conscious, slow, green travel business where people come in, have a more of an immersive journey. A lot of people have been coming to Belize in the past. They see as far as the beach in Ambergris Key at San Pedro, and they think that's Belize. Well, it really isn't. There's so much more beyond that. And we want to encourage those people who are really thinking hard about where they go for their trips. And maybe by that, I mean, they fall in love like I did and want to connect with one or two or NGOs in the long term. And then the third reason was that I felt that there were some good examples on our series that showed how this agricultural industry could be converted more to added value food production. There's a lot of food items that leave Belize in the semi-natural state or unfinished state. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for inward bound investment from particularly, say, North America, of people to come down and invest in the country and create all sorts of micro businesses which will add value to the food chain. And that we showed that clearly in a couple of cases in the documentary film series. So there was a few reasons there why we wanted to make this series. And I think that anyone watches that, I mean, anyone that I've been with who sees the films, they're definitely sort of drawn towards the country. You can't see it and go, well, so I'm not interested in going. I mean, you'd have to be somewhat unconscious if you just saw the films and weren't compelled to want to visit. But of course, it's not like accessible so easy from various parts of the world. But Europe, I think, and North America, we're the closest to it, and a short stop in the States or Mexico City to get into Belize is the way. And from the States, obviously, it's a single flight.
And of course, it is the only country in Central and Latin America that speaks English, which is great from a personal perspective, Elma. But I think Paul picked up on this as well. It's the small population, and you said 400,000 people in an area that is the size of Wales. So there's a great sense of space here. I mean, this is a place where you really, once you're outside of Belize City, which is not in itself a very big place, if you've come from somewhere like any major metropolis, it really is a place that you can reconnect very quickly with nature. And I suppose that sort of mental aspect and emotional sort of aspect of reconnecting nature is something that we probably all need to do a little bit more.
Yes, absolutely. And Belize is like, I like to think of Belize as wild, because even in the urban spaces, I mean, for example, we haven't, you go to any other Central American country and the big capital cities are going to have, the McDonald's, the fast food, these brands that are obviously not healthy for us, and but they are very, very, very popular. Yes. Belize has never had any of that. Belize hasn't had these chains. All the food is local, and so it really gives you a sense of being in a place that's very different. And the parks themselves are, like I said, it's so much beauty, but also just so much wilderness that it really, you have to connect.
Yeah, I think that's really Paul. He'll drop back in a second. I know that's what Paul's always said, is that the ability to feel very connected. As soon as he lands in Belize, it's the sense of space and the wildness of it.
Back in the room.
Paul, I was just saying, the thing you've always talked about, Belize, as soon as you land there, it's that you're immediately connected to the sense of space and wildness as soon as you step foot on it, and love the fact about how uninhabited it is.
It's the minute you land. I when I'm there, I just sort of walk across the car park in front of the airport, go to the car rental place, pick up my keys and head off. And I'll probably only see half a dozen more cars onto my journey where I'm going. So it's just got this relaxed atmosphere. It's just a very, very chilled but and friendly place, and I feel very safe there. It's not like, some people talk about certain countries in Central America, and I keep going back to Belize time and time again. I think to myself, well, should I go and explore the neighboring countries? And yes, I've been to Guatemala, and I've been a little bit to Yucatan, but I keep getting drawn back to Belize because I really believe that when you really fall in love with a country, then it's worth going back and getting to know more and digging deeper and connecting more. And I can't see the point in myself personally spreading myself so thin across those Latin American countries or Central American countries. So Belize has really captured my spirit, and I spend probably upwards of 4 to 6 weeks a winter there, and I have been doing for the last 10 years, and feel completely at ease, and got a really good network of friends now and contacts, and Elma's one of them, obviously, and we've known each other for some years, and there's some great lodges, hotels, and resorts, and small boutique places to go to, and lots and lots to explore.
Yeah, you mentioned the in the show Unknown Belize, which you've pulled together and produced, and of course one of the hosts there is Sean Coulion, who's a great chef on the island. So it's quite interesting. You'll get a blend of the different foods because up at Blankano, guess they have this organic garden, which we've all tried and is amazing. Then of course there's the coastal areas with all the fish. So you've got a range of the Belizean food and culture within that. And Elma, of course, also you have a mix of people's heritage, because you've got the Garifnas, and then of course the ancient Mayans, and these amazing temples they're just sitting in the middle of the jungle, which I think are really extraordinary.
Yes, and that has been a huge part of, like, I think we need to sort of create more consciousness about this, because the conservation work we're doing is also work to preserve our cultural heritage. The Belize Maya forest is recently, there was some LiDAR that was done, and so some of the archaeologists working on the property and who have been working in that area, we've been liaising with them. And it's amazing. I mean, there's so much to be studied and, potentially excavated and, looked at. And it really, I mean, it just blows my mind, because saving this 236,000 acres is not just saving trees and wildlife. It's also saving that part of our heritage that, we need to rescue, we need to understand. Really is brilliant, but I don't think normally those things are connected. We kind of see archaeology as its own thing, and then the wild animals as its own thing. But we have to think this was a landscape that was once, the Maya were all over, and of course we still have Maya. I'm a descendant of Yucatec Maya, and like most people in Belize, I've got a little bit of everything else. But I would say that most of us still have that part of us, that's the indigenous practices and the indigenous culture. And of course, we do have Maya villages that have fully retained the traditional ways and, and exist in Belize. And those exist alongside, as you had mentioned, Garifuna communities, which, are also indigenous from the Caribbean, mixed with African. We also have our Creole population, which are a mix of African and European. We have our mestizos that are a mix of indigenous and European. I mean, and just about everything else that you can think of: East Indian, Chinese, Lebanese. There's old families in this country that came in the 1800s and have been here of all different races and colors, and that has all mixed in with the indigenous blood as well. And so Belize is very, very diverse, and it's actually unique, because I like to think we're like a salad, but at the same time we do have, like, sometimes some of the bits in the salad kind of mix up. You get that. So it's fascinating, and I think it's a part of our culture that we are extremely proud of, in terms of being able to just like live together in shared space.
those local people, and that sort of, I get a sense of the the indigenous peoples there, and particularly in the Mayans who have been on the land a long time. That reconnection between, they've always worked with the nature, and so there's now that helping to protect it and run the programs and stop the poaching in whichever areas they go. I think that's quite a powerful role and message for people to understand.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And beyond the recognized, I think Paul mentioned, so our country is still 60% forested, and 40% of the land territory is protected. So that means that there is at least 20% that is still in forests that are being held in private lands, and some of those lands are indigenous lands, and people have been stewarding those lands for centuries. And so there needs to be a recognition that there's protection in using different models in Belize. It's not your typical country where you have like a national park system and it's only government managed areas. We have government managed areas, we have community managed areas, and in our case we have private protected areas that are being held in trust for the people and government of Belize, but managed privately.
And Paul, what do you think the benefit is of bringing together small groups of like-minded people on a journey like this, and sharing an immersive experience, both for them and also for the projects that host them?
Yeah, well, I think going in a smaller group and getting closer to the ecologists on the ground gives you better opportunities of seeing certain species. I think you get to learn more when there's a smaller group, and I think that ultimately, hopefully, maybe over time, these small groups can then yield some more interesting stakeholders in regards to the foundations that are operating on the ground. There are some wonderful, magical sort of moments that'll be had, and it's those moments that people think and reflect and think, I'd like to go back and scratch a little bit deeper. Africa has got this incredible ability of drawing people in, and seeing the magnificent landscapes and wildlife and nature, and seeing the communities there and so on. And I think a lot of people fall in love with Africa. Once they're locked in, they keep going back there time and time again. And you can kind of understand that. And but we also believe that there's other countries in the equatorial zone that are equally as fascinating and interesting. And Belize is just one of those. And I just was thinking a moment ago that there's not many places you can go to where I think it's, I don't know, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, something like about 50 miles offshore, you can see saltwater crocodiles. I mean, you wouldn't think that on an atoll out in the Caribbean Sea, that in the evening, in certain places, saltwater North American saltwater crocodiles will roll up on the beach. So it's quite unusual, and I find that really, really special. These unique little opportunities that we're going to be running into along the way, and I think small groups is a great way forward, and just allows you to get more personal and close up, and really look through the lens of what's going on, and understanding more the people we're going to be meeting. I mean, I talk about the travel industry as skimming, dipping, and diving like a bird, and we've been doing far too much skimming, where we just go for a night or two and just scratch the surface of a place. And then dipping is where you go for a week or two and you actually engage with people, and you might meet someone that's local and talk to them and chat with them. And then there's the dive, where you spend months away at a time. And I really do encourage these more immersive dipping journeys, where you really scratch the surface and you start to learn about the place you're in, and not just you have a quick fix trip, just fly by. And I think this journey that we put together, or the Journeys with Purpose that put together, really is a great more immersive journey. And even though it's only 8 days long, there's plenty of opportunities for the guests to extend their trip, whether they want to extend it longer in Belize, or they want to go down to Antigua in Guatemala, or go across the Flores, or go somewhere else in the Caribbean. I mean, you know, there are plenty of other places you can add on to this trip. Of course, we'd like to see people stay longer in Belize, but there is a sort of smorgasbord of places neighboring to Belize that are worth exploring. So I would encourage everybody that comes on this trip to think about staying for at least 2 weeks in the region.
And what do you think? I'll ask you both. I'll ask Elma first, and then Paul, you can jump in as well. What do you think Journeys with Purpose guests' biggest takeaway about the conservation efforts will be post the journey?
I think hope. You know, to me, that is the work we do, everything we do is about, you know, giving you a sense of inspiration and hopefulness that some of the work that we're doing here, you know, that some of those things can also be done in your own backyard. You know, we want people to go home and also want to have that purpose, you know, to serve that purpose of, you know, conserving what's wild, because what's wild is good for us. It's really a no-brainer, you know. It's good for our health, it's good for our wealth, it's just overall good for us, for our well-being. And I think, you know, making that connection here, obviously we want them to fall in love with Belize and to potentially stay in touch with us and connect us to others who want to be in touch with Belize and want to learn Belize and want to love Belize. But I think, you know, beyond that, you know, it's to show that, you know, there are some things that are working really well that we can do very well. And actually the level of support, the level of investment, being able to scale up those initiatives, it gives us hope that we can actually do this. You know, there's a lot of cause for not having hope with, you know, global climate change issues, so many things that make us feel that we can't change something. You know, it gives us a sense of gloom and doom. And I think when they're in Belize and they see how much we're doing and the opportunity that is there to do more, I'm hoping that people will leave with that sense of hope and inspiration, and that will also translate to some of the actions that they will have, like I say, in their own backyards.
I think Francis Ford Coppola said it very well in the series, and guests will be staying in his two rather luxurious properties as well. And a man who's invested a lot of time in Belize since he discovered it was, I think he said, in Belize, you have discovered the secret of how to work with nature. And so that hopeful message of how, if people can take that back, Paul, and if they just take that message back, we can work with nature, and because there is a country here that is doing it and understanding it, and take that back into other parts of the world.
Yeah, I think it's a country that's got a very, very small population that's really packing a punch for nature. And the takeaway for me is that people will just come away feeling like they've really been looked after, really been hosted well, incredibly friendly people, and knowing that the country that is so close to the United States has yet remained relatively unscathed from sort of mass deforestation, and that's what's really important. You know, we must preserve the last remaining wild forests of the world. You know, a lot of places we're doing this rewilding we will talk about now, and that's great, and that should happen too. But let's not neglect those regions of the world that have got some really old, ancient, in some cases virgin forest that is left, jungle, and the desire to protect those and the carbon that's stored there, and the ecosystem and the wildlife and the biodiversity and the watershed that it creates. I mean, you know, Belize is supplying water into Guatemala, but they don't really have much themselves in that region of the Petén because of, you know, their large-scale deforestation agricultural activities means that, you know, the water supplies are short. And so, and you know, that part of Guatemala really depends on Belize for clean water because of the Chicabol. And so, you know, maintaining these landscapes is vitally important, and getting people over to Belize that are conscious travelers to fall in love and particularly get involved, maybe for a longer term, is what it's all about. You know, 3% of global giving philanthropy or corporate social responsibility, all the different elements of giving, just goes to air, water, and soil, just 3%. And I really think we've got to step it up. And Journeys with Purpose are doing a really good job in getting people to the coalface and understanding what's going on in a country.
Yeah, and in a sense, it's a reminder of what we've lost in many parts of the world, but still exists today, Elma, in Belize. And that, I suppose, if that comes over as a strong lesson, that can make people really think about the environments when they go back home that they live in.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, that is why I work home and have stayed home, or returned home, after studying abroad and living abroad for a bit, because I just, I mean, there is so much to do here. The opportunity is big. And I like to say, if you cannot, really transform lives, cultures, how we think about nature, our connection with nature, in a country of 400,000 people, then this is the place to do it, right? This is the place that, like I say, with the correct support, the correct vision, the correct investment, we still have that opportunity that many have lost, or as Paul says, they're into restoring. In our case, like it isn't broken. We need to see how we keep it functioning as is while people are still well.
Well, look, I know it's going to be an amazing trip. We haven't actually mentioned that it's also probably it's absolutely the best time of the year to be there. So, yes. I mean, it's it couldn't get any better. The end of February and March, it'll be pretty miserable elsewhere in other parts of the world. So it's an amazing trip. Elma, Paul, thank you both so much for sharing your thoughts, and for those lucky few that managed to make it. Boy, what a time they're going to have.